You already know how important email marketing is to growing your online business. The problem is, if you're like most online business owners I meet, you might be leaving thousands of dollars every month on the table because you're making these big email marketing mistakes. After selling well over $1 million of coaching, consulting, and courses online, I can tell you I've made pretty much every one of these mistakes. So in this episode, I want to show you what they are and how to avoid them so you can generate more sales, clients, and income with every email you send. The first big email marketing mistake is treating email like a one-way street. So I used to do this back in 2016 when I started email marketing and running my first official online business. I saw email as a one-way conversation. I saw it as I would write an email, I'd send it out to my list, and they would open the email, they'd click the links, they'd buy my stuff, and I didn't really have to have a two-way conversation with them. I didn't really even see the possibility of having that two-way conversation with other people in my audience through email. But over time, what I've discovered about email marketing is it's one of the best ways to build intimacy and connection with the people in your audience. And in order to do this, you have to treat email like a two-way street. And it's kind of crazy that we don't think about this as online business owners, or most people don't, because email is something that is so naturally built as like a two-way conversation. Like most people, when they get emails, they respond to them. Yet when it comes to email marketing, most of us think of email marketing as a one-way conversation. It's like, I'm just sending my emails out to my audience. But the truth is the power of email marketing, I found, is really in that two-way conversation. So when you can invite your audience into a dialogue with you, when you can treat it less as here's my emails that you're just, consuming and I'm just sending them to you and I'm just this faceless person behind the scenes and you can't talk to me, and more like, how do we build a connection and a relationship and a conversation here? And maybe this email can spark something that can inspire you to reply to me, and then we can have some back and forth and we can build that intimacy and connection. There's so much more opportunity there, not just for building deeper relationships, but also for generating more sales in your business. Back in June, we had our first six-figure launch in my business. And one of the things that I did differently in that launch that I think was responsible significantly for the sales volume in that launch, and the fact that it was so much more successful, than some of the other launches that we've done, is that I treated the launch as a two-way conversation. So we actually had a phone number on the sales page, and I invited people to text me personally with questions. And throughout the launch, I was sending emails, and in some of the emails, I would invite people to reply to the emails with questions that they had about the program. What was great about this was I could actually get people who were reaching out to me and replying to the emails, and maybe they were on the fence, and we could have some dialogue there, and I could help them get to a point where in many cases it was like, okay, this is going to be a good fit for you, and they would go sign up. But what was also great about this was that I was able to learn so much about what people were thinking throughout that launch process. So I could hear, okay, there were, six people that reached out to me with the same objection. So let me write an email about this objection, because it's probably on the minds of a lot more people if I'm hearing this quite a bit from the people who are reaching out. So it becomes a way that you can tap into what your audience is thinking. And this process of feedback from your audience that you can get through inviting people to just reply to your emails can make everything that you do so much more impactful and effective. So are you treating email as a one-way conversation today? Or do you see it as that two-way connection point with the people who are in your audience? And how, if you're not treating it as a two-way conversation today, how can you bring more of that two-way dialogue into the way that you use email marketing in your business? This could be as simple as just inviting people to reply to an email. So obvious, but when was the last time you did this? So don't treat email as a one-way street. Treat it as a two-way conversation instead. And that brings us to mistake number 2, which this is a big one for me. This is something that I still have a hard time with at times. Is something that I forget all the time and I have to continually remember, which is skimping on your subject lines. I don't know about you, but it's so easy for me when I'm writing emails to sit down and I spend all my time writing the body of the email. And then after I do that, in like 10 seconds, I'm like, well, let me just come up with some throwaway subject line for the email. And then I send it out. And that's how most people, I find, send emails. Here's the problem with that. The subject line is actually the most important thing. Because if your subject line isn't good, the email's not even going to get opened. So you could have the best email in the world, but if your subject line sucks, you just treat it as like a throwaway, you're missing out on like the most important part of your email. It's a headline. And I love that phrase or that quote by David Ogilvy. He's one of like the old school OG ad guys. And he says, once you've written your headline, you've spent 80 cents of your advertising dollar. This guy understood that the headline is the most important part. And when it comes to your emails, your subject line is the headline. So are you treating your subject lines as throwaways? Are they the last thing that you write? Or do you spend as much time working on the subject line as you do on your body copy? Now, what is the key to writing really good subject lines? I think there's a lot out there about how to do this effectively, but one of the most effective concepts I've found to help you write better subject lines that actually get your emails opened is to try to create a curiosity gap using your subject line. What is a curiosity gap? Well, if I were to ask you the question, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good way to explain this. So if I were to say, hey, there's 7 things that if you're doing them when it comes to your email marketing, you're probably leaving thousands of dollars a month on the table. If I were to just say that to you, what are you thinking? You're probably thinking, well, hold on a second. Like, what are those 7 things? Like, you've just opened up a gap in my mind, and there's some curiosity there. And as human beings, there's some tension that's actually created in that gap because there's a piece of information that I don't have. You've told me that this mistake that I could be making could be costing me thousands of dollars, but you haven't told me what the mistake is. And so there's this tension that's created in that moment that makes me want to get the information on the other side to close that gap. This is what really good subject lines do. This is what really good headlines do. This is probably one of the reasons you're actually watching this video right now. Because what I did in the title of the episode, or wherever you're listening to this, if you're listening to this on our podcast, the title or the thumbnail or whatever, if you're on YouTube, what I did was I opened up that curiosity gap for you. And that was what inspired you to click this. And now you're watching the video to actually close that gap. So great email subject lines do this. They open that curiosity gap. They create that open loop for your audience that creates some tension and makes them feel like they need to click on the email in order to resolve that and in order to alleviate that tension and close the gap. So when you're writing email subject lines, if you think about this and you ask yourself, okay, how can I create a curiosity gap here? How can I frame this subject line in a way that opens up that gap for the person who's going to be scrolling through their inbox, who's going to see that email so that they feel like they need to click the email in order to actually close the gap? That's probably one of the biggest keys to writing subject lines that actually get opened. Of course, there's a lot more to say on this, but this is probably one of the most important principles. And by the way, this doesn't just apply to email subject lines. This applies to headlines, the first line on a post on social media, your YouTube thumbnails, if you're creating video content. How can you create a curiosity gap? The more that you can do that, the more effective your email subject lines will be. That brings us to mistake number 3 when it comes to email marketing, which is including multiple calls to action. This is something that I have done in the past. This is something that oftentimes I still slip in as a mistake. And I look back and I say, okay, well, I probably shouldn't have done that. So I think of email and really marketing in general as you always want to direct someone towards one clear next step. So I think of it like, okay, if you're looking at an email, the goal of the subject line is to get somebody to open the email. And then if you have a link in the email, the goal of the email is to get them to click the link. And in order to do that effectively, we really only want to be driving someone to one very specific next step. So a big mistake that I'll often see with folks when they're sending out emails is they've got like 4 or 5 different things that they're sending people to or directing people to in an email. It's like, hey, you can apply to work with me here, or you can go, sign up for this other program here, or you can send an email back to me and you can just reply to this email and let me know. Or we also have this free thing over here. And it's like, we're just dumping links on people. And what that does is it creates overwhelm. It creates overwhelm for the reader. And when the reader has too many options, when the reader has 5 different things that they can do, it creates a feeling of overwhelm that is actually going to make it less likely that that person does anything. So even, when you've got a million different links, the reason most people do this is they're like, okay, well, if I feel like I provide more to people, then they're just going to click on more stuff. But in reality, it's like you're just creating chaos that is going to create confusion. So before you write an email, ask yourself, what is it that I want the reader to do when they open this email? Sometimes it's just read the email. There isn't like a link in the email. But other times it might be, I have a very specific next step that I want this person to take. And so if that's the case, great. We can make sure that that is the thing that is highlighted clearly in the email. And you have one link or one, place for somebody to click. It's not to say that you can't feature that same link multiple times throughout the email. And that's often a good thing to do. But one clear action step, one clear destination that you're sending people to, instead of having multiple things that are just going to create confusion and are going to make it less likely that someone does what you actually want them to do, which obviously in this case is click the link. Hey friend, hope you're enjoying this episode of the podcast. And before we get back to it, if you're an established online business owner who's serious about unlocking your next level of income and impact and growth in your business, I want you to watch my free $1 Million Online Business Training, where I walk through a 4-step roadmap I've personally used to sell well over $1 million of coaching, consulting, and courses online. It's going to make the journey of growing your business so much easier. I want to give this to you for free. All you got to do to access it is go to jasonmoss.com/growth. That's jasonmoss.com/GROWTH to get free access to this training right now. Now back to the episode. So that brings us to mistake number 4. This is a big one. This is probably one of the biggest things that I see with the clients that I work with. And one of the biggest reasons more people's emails don't get read and opened. And that is the mistake of writing emails that look like newsletters. Here's the thing. Nobody likes being marketed to. We just don't want to be marketed to. And if you think about the amount of things that you get in your inbox every day, most of us have filters in our minds that very quickly skim and read content to identify patterns. And one of the patterns that most of us are really good at being able to identify is this marketing or is this not marketing? And if it's marketing, we're just going to unsubscribe. Because, it's like we're overwhelmed with marketing messages. So the mistake that so many people make is they make their emails look like marketing. And they make them look like newsletters, and they got all fancy branding and images at the top. And it's like this, it looks like it's an email that would be sent out by like Amazon or, somewhere else. And a lot of people do this because they think that making their emails look more quote unquote professional is going to add more credibility to their brand and it's going to make them look better. But in reality, when someone opens an email that looks like it was written by a company, it's much more likely to get, number one, put in spam. So they're probably not even going to see it in the first place. And number 2, it's much more likely to get unsubscribed from and not read in the first place because people will see that and they'll go, oh, that looks like marketing. The same thing with like Facebook ads. It's fascinating. Like the ads that look like the least like marketing are the ads that are most likely to get watched. It's the same reason why I often recommend people just put up images of themselves like in selfies on their social media profile and use those images instead of like professional brand shots, because those are the things that are much more likely to get stopped on when people are scrolling versus, when you see like a professional brand photo on social media, instantly your mind says this is marketing. And it's so much more likely to get skipped past. So The key to getting your emails opened and read is to make them feel like they are emails that were sent from a friend. When you can create an email that looks like it was sent from someone this person might know, where it literally looks like an email that was just composed by somebody else, not a brand, not a company, that email is much more likely to get read. So what does this look like on a practical level? Well, number one, it means you don't have all sorts of fancy branding and images in your content. You just write like plain text emails. Number two, you write to the individual. So I see a lot of people doing this when they're writing their emails. They'll write to their audience. It's like, hey guys, hope everyone's doing well. I wanted to share some thoughts here, versus the way you really want to write an email is you want to write to that direct person in your audience that you know that you want to speak to, that person who is a perfect fit to work with you. So when you write an email, you write using you and I. It's not like you're writing to a group of people like you're speaking on a stage. It's, hey, I hope you're having an awesome week. I wanted to reach out to you and share some tips about this. Oftentimes when you do this, this is the result so there's a you and I conversation happening. You'll notice that's how I'm recording this video right now too, because I think of it like you and I are having a conversation right now. Because when I'm creating a piece of content like this, it's always one person on the other side of the screen that's actually watching it. So I'm not talking to like a group of 5,000 people when I record this video. I'm talking to you, the person who's actually watching this here. So now we're having this intimate one-on-one conversation, and hopefully you feel a little bit more connected to me as a result. This is how you want to write emails. Also, we want to break up the text. This is another more like stylistic formatting thing that I see a lot. People don't want to read big blocks of text. Oftentimes when I see like a big block of text, it's like, oh, that feels like work. And I don't want to work. I'm probably overwhelmed with work. I'm probably checking my email because I'm trying to avoid the work that I know I need to do. So you want to break the lines up, and you'll see if you're subscribed to my email list, you'll see when I send out emails, the lines are really short and choppy, and they're broken up. So rather than having like a big paragraph of like 5 lines of text that's all smushed together, it's like there's a short little line, and then it's the next line, and then it's the next line. And there's a reason I write this way. Some people are like, why do you write this way? It's so weird. I'm like, well, the reason I write this way is because it makes it really easy to read. And so when you read that first line in an email, you're like, okay, that looks unintimidating. Now you've read the first line, you're like, okay, well, what's the next line? And what's the next line? And by the time you realize what you're doing, you're like halfway down the email. So I create an experience that is more inviting and is easier for somebody to step into, versus if you've got a big block of text, it's just going to be overwhelming for people. And it's going to make it much less likely that people actually read the thing that you really want them to read. So that is number 4, writing emails that look like newsletters. We really want to avoid that. And the more you can write emails that look like they were sent from real human beings, the more likely your emails are to get read. This brings us to mistake number 5. This is a big one too. This is something that when I look back, when I first started doing email marketing, this is a big mistake that I made. This is something I often see with my clients as well. And something that's pretty controversial. Like when I recommend this, people are often like, their first reaction is like, really? Like that sounds like it's too much. The big mistake that I think most people make is they don't send enough emails. If you're emailing your list once a week, if you're emailing your list once every other week, you're not emailing your list enough. What you're doing is you're creating a surface level connection. And if your MO is, I just want to email people enough that I'm not going to piss them off, basically, you're leaving a ton of money on the table. Here's the thing. Here's my philosophy when it comes to email, when it comes to content, when it comes to the way that I engage with my audience in general. What I want when someone signs up to my email list is I want to send a lot of emails to them so they form an opinion of me quickly. And they get to the place very quickly where they either go, this person is for me, or I need to unsubscribe. That's what I want. I want to be polarizing. I want to show up in a way that forces somebody to figure out where they stand in terms of how their relationship with me is. Because in the long run, it doesn't really serve them to be on my email list if they really shouldn't be there. And it also doesn't serve me because I don't want a bunch of like half-in people on my email list. I want the people who are all in. I'd rather have a much smaller list of people who are reading everything that I'm sharing and are engaged and are like the true fans versus a much larger list of people where they're just kind of like in this wishy-washy place with me where they don't really have enough of an opinion of me to feel any sort of way. Those are not people that are going to become buyers. They're also not people that are really getting any value from what I'm doing anyways. So the key to creating this polarization is you got to send emails a lot more frequently than you're probably used to. And that might be a little uncomfortable for you because you might have a story that you're telling yourself that says, oh, I'm afraid of pissing people off. But here's the reframe. Your people, the people who are actually, number one, going to end up most likely buying from you, and the people who are like your true fans, the people who love what you do, you can never send too many emails to them. You can never piss them off because they love what you do. They want to hear more from you. Those are the types of people who are like, please send me more emails. You know, occasionally I get an email from someone on my email list that's like, you're sending me too many emails. I'm like, great, unsubscribe. I can already tell this person's never going to buy anything from me. They're not interested in what I'm doing. The person who's annoyed by me is not my person anyways. So I'm not writing for that person. When I send an email out to my list, I'm writing to the small percentage of people that I know are my true fans. So what this means is I send a lot of emails. I might send an email a day to my list, and you might hear that and you go, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. But what it means is I have deep relationships and connections with the people who are following me. And those people are much more likely to become buyers because they get to experience more of me versus me being in this wishy-washy place where I'm just like, I'm just going to send enough emails that I don't piss people off. That's not serving anybody. So are you sending enough emails to your list? And if so, how can you send more? If you're not sending enough emails. This doesn't have to be overwhelming, by the way. It doesn't have to be, every email doesn't have to be like a perfectly crafted thing. You know, you can write emails that literally you're just sitting down in like 5 minutes and just writing like a stream of consciousness thing and then send it out to your list. That's great. It doesn't have to be like a perfectly crafted thing. When you can engage in this way, you're much more likely to create those deeper relationships and connections with people, and people are much more likely to buy from you. Because the more they hear from you, the quicker they're going to form that opinion and that perspective that's going to either move them closer to wanting to work with you or move them to unsubscribe, which is great. That is exactly what I want. So that brings us to mistake number 6, which is not cleaning your list. This is one of the biggest things that I think people don't think about enough. And one of the things that has changed pretty drastically from the early days when I first started doing email marketing. So when I first started doing email marketing, mostly back in 2016, I was doing some stuff before that, but really 2016 was when I got started with my first online business. I had this big email list of like 30, 40,000 people that I had built off the back of YouTube in my first business. And I was sending out emails to that entire list every single week. And whenever I would do launches, I would send out broadcast emails to that entire list of people. And I never really cleaned that list. I mean, I did later on, but in the early days, I really wasn't like unsubscribing people who weren't engaging. It was just like anyone who had ever subscribed to my email list, I was like sending them emails. Here's the problem with this. And this is what most people do, I find, is, you know, they're just sending out emails to their entire list of people who have all, you know, at any point subscribed to want to hear from them. The problem is all of these email marketing or all of these email service providers, the Gmails, the Yahoos. I mean, does anyone actually use Yahoo anymore? I don't even know. Mostly Gmail, I think, is where most of it is. But, all these platforms, they have these spam filters. And what they do is they basically look at when you send an email out, let's say, for most people, like 70% of their email list is probably Gmail. So when you send out an email to your email list, it might go to like 1,000 people or 10,000 people who have Gmail addresses. And Google knows this. And so they measure how many people are actually opening and reading and engaging with your emails that you send out. And if a small percentage of those people are actually engaging, Gmail is much more likely to view your emails as spam. And so what ends up happening is if you're sending emails out to a lot of people who aren't engaging with them, you're much more likely to end up out of someone's inbox and in someone's spam filter, which means people won't actually even see your emails in the first place, even if they're great emails. So this is a big problem, and this is something that has changed pretty drastically over, the past few years, which means paying attention to deliverability is so much more important than it used to be. So on a practical level, how do you make sure your emails actually end up in the inbox? Well, what you have to do is you have to make sure that you're sending your emails to people who are actually opening them and being a lot more aggressive about unsubscribing people on your email list who aren't actually engaging. So what does this look like for us? We actually have an automation set up in our email marketing software. So basically, we have it so that if someone doesn't open or click an email in 30 days, they get put into like a auto responder sequence. And it's a couple emails that go out that are like, hey, are you still interested in getting emails from us, basically? And if people don't engage on those emails, they automatically get unsubscribed. So it's this system that's basically automatically cleaning out all of the old emails in our email list. And because of that, when we send an email out, we get between 40 to 50% open rates on average, versus most people, their open rates are much lower than that. So if you're not doing something to clean your email list today, you are running the risk of having emails that you send out that don't actually end up in people's inboxes. And this is something that I think a lot more online business owners need to pay attention to. So looking into setting something like this up, it doesn't have to be like a crazy system. Most email service providers have tools that you can use in their platforms to manage your engagement and to unsubscribe people who are not engaged. So just look into that depending on what platform you're using. And you should be able to find some tools that can help you with that to make sure that you're not ending up in people's spam filters. Super, super important. And that brings us to mistake number 7, which, if there's anything on this list that I think for me personally has been a challenge more than anything else, is probably this one, which is not balancing likability with being the guide. So what the heck does this mean? You might be asking yourself. Well, when I talk about messaging and I teach messaging inside our various programs and help online business owners dial in their messaging and their content strategy, I have this phrase that I use that really describes the goal of what we're really trying to do when we show up in our content. And that is to position yourself as what I call a likable guide. So a likable guide is someone who someone else feels connected to on a human level. That's the likable piece. Someone feels like connected to you because maybe, they resonate with who you are as a human being, and they feel like you share values with them and they like your personality. And the guide piece is the other side of this, which is someone actually feeling like you can help them because you have expertise and knowledge and authority in helping someone solve a specific problem or get from where they are today to where they want to be. So these two words, likable and guide, really sum up how you want to be showing up in your content on a daily basis. And when you're doing a good job balancing both of these things, what you're doing is you're building those personal relationships and connections with people, but you're also showing up in a way that helps someone see you as someone who can really help them. What I find is most people are really good at one of these pieces, but they're not typically good at both of these pieces. So what I often find, I'll just speak from my own personal experience. And even as I'm sharing this, I'm like, this video is like a perfect example of this. I'm really good at like the guide part. I'm really good at creating content that positions me as a guide. So how-to content and content where I talk about my expertise and authority and all of those things. But I struggle a lot more with building that likability piece, with showing people more of who I really am. And I don't think I do that enough. And when I look back over my business, I think this has been one of the biggest opportunities for me that has gotten in the way of really building those relationships with people on a deeper level. So they see me as more than just like another generic business coach. And on the other side, I often meet people who are really good at like the likable piece. They're great at telling stories and sharing pieces of their life, but they're not as good as positioning themselves as that guide, showing up in a way where someone actually can see them as an authority, as someone who is an expert in this specific area, as someone who can really help them navigate that transformation in their life. So I find with the clients I work with is usually they're really good at one or the other, but they're not typically great at both. So looking at how you're showing up in your emails and asking yourself, when we look at that phrase, likable guide, which of those two words do you think you're doing really well, and which do you feel like is your biggest opportunity? So are you just sending out a bunch of how-to content to your email list and a bunch of content that positions you as an expert, but maybe you're not really sharing who you are and talking about stories from your own life and bringing your personality and your values and your beliefs to the table? So maybe we need to build more likability in your emails. Or maybe on the other hand, you're actually really good at that, but we need to create more emails that position you more as that guide, as that authority, as that expert in someone else's mind. So which one of those do you feel like is the biggest opportunity for you? Not finding the right balance between these two things is probably one of the biggest things that I think keeps people from making more sales and on a deeper level from reaching their highest potential in their business. If you're someone who's really good at building likability, but you're not really good at the guide piece, people will feel really connected to you on a human level, but they're not going to want to buy from you. This is like the classic social media influencer, someone who has a lot of likability. People might follow them, but they're not going to pay them money because they don't see this person as someone who can help them. On the other hand, if you're just building your guide positioning, if you're showing up as an expert, people maybe will pay you money, but they're going to view you as a commodity. And so you'll get on phone calls with people and they're like, oh, what makes you different from all the other business coaches? Or, they're just going to shop for the lowest price. They're going to see you just like they see everybody else because you haven't brought enough of yourself into your business to help someone create that moment where they feel connected enough to you on a human level where they go, you're my person. So it's really about these two things and balancing these two things, that when you can bring them together in your emails and your content and how you're showing up online, that is really where the magic is. And that is where you're able to create the deepest connections and relationships to attract clients who are going to want to work with you no matter what, even if you're charging more than other people who are doing similar work because they feel so connected to you. And this is really how you build a successful online business, by bringing those two things into everything that you do. So much value here. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but I think there is. I think so many things we talked about today that are just so powerful and so important. Which of these mistakes do you feel like is the biggest opportunity for growth for you? If you're watching on YouTube, I'd love to hear down below. Leave a comment down below and let me know. There's just, so many things when I look at this list, I'm like, I've made every one of these mistakes and I still at times do. So it's normal if you're in the camp where you recognize yourself in this video. And these are things that we can work on and improve over time. Now, obviously, email marketing is one big key to success when it comes to running a profitable and growing a profitable online business. There's so much more that comes into play. You got to have clarity on your niche. You got to know who your people are. You got to have an offer that people really want to buy, an offer that's irresistible. You got to have the right marketing strategy as a whole. And email marketing is often a piece of that, but there are so many more pieces that need to be in place in order to create success, and also a sales process to be able to convert those people who are clicking on your emails or are applying to work with you or are reaching out to you into paying clients and sales in your business. And if you're serious about unlocking your next level of business growth, or maybe you're in a place in your business where you're just not where you want to be, new clients are inconsistent, your income is up and down, you're working too hard, or you're feeling like confused, or you're missing clarity on what to do in order to grow your business, we've got so many different ways we can help you with this. This is literally all I do every single day. We've got high-level programs that are really designed to give you a proven roadmap and mentorship and guidance and support to help you dial in your marketing, get clarity on exactly what you need to do next to grow your business, to get more clients, to increase your sales, and to increase your revenue, and to do it in a way on a deeper level that doesn't burn you out, that feels aligned and authentic for you, so that you can make a bigger impact and also experience more freedom through the business that you run. Most of us, myself included, like when I started my business, I didn't do it because I wanted to be stressed out or to work harder than I was working when I was working for somebody else. I wanted to run a business that allowed me the flexibility, the freedom, the ability to live the life that I want to live, and to be able to serve people and help people and make a big impact, and to make a lot of money doing it, to be able to live exactly the kind of life that I want. And if you're ready for that, if you're looking for clarity on how to do that, to unlock that next level of growth, you're a business owner who already has a business up and running, so you're not completely brand new. You've signed some clients, you've made some sales, and you're wanting to get to that next level. I'd love to open up a conversation about how I might be able to help you with that. Your next step, if you're wanting to take that next step and explore how we might be able to work together on a deeper level, is to go to jasonmoss.com/apply. That's Jason Moss, JasonMoss.com/apply, APPLY. I'm like, is that the way you spell apply? I believe so. And, there's an application there. Go fill it out. It takes a couple minutes. That will go directly to me. I'll review that personally. If I think I can help you and I think you're a good fit, I'll reach out to you and we'll have a no pressure chat about your next steps and how we can do that and what basically that would look like. So that's available to you, jasonmoss.com/apply. Hope to see you on the inside, and looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. We got so much more good stuff to come. So I will see you soon.